What's good, everybody? I'm Jay Webb, and of course, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Over Quota. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. My goal, as I say always, so if you're a first-time listener, this is for you specifically. If you've been listening in the past, feel free to fast forward this about 30 or 40 seconds, but I'm going to repeat it for the people who are just tuning in. My goal is to give listeners a variety of perspectives and insight from sales leaders who have a proven track record of exceeding expectations for themselves and or their teams, realizing, of course, that not one person has all of the answers. And like always, the J. David Group, which is my company, will be sponsoring this podcast. My company helps high-growth software companies recruit top software sales leaders and salespeople. So go to the jdavidgroup.com/hiring to learn more, or go to the jdavidgroup.com/looking if you're looking for your next big challenge. Now, my guest today is Jeff Hoffman. He's a seasoned sales leader and founder of Rapid Sales Revenue, which is a CRO advisory firm focused on revenue strategy and the process to ensure top-line performance is sustainable and scalable. Jeff, welcome to Over Quota.
Thank you very much, Jay. Pleasure to be here.
So let's start with what I just ended with. Give me the 30,000-foot view, I guess, if you will, of the Jeff Hoffman backstory, and then also what Rapid Sales Revenue helps its clients do.
Sure. Well, I spent about 15 years selling enterprise software for the likes of IBM, Oracle, some smaller companies, a company called Vitria, another one called Essential, which got bought by IBM. And then in 2008, I really wanted to do something more strategic. So I found opportunities to get into management, and I did that with a company out of Belgium, had a risk regulatory reporting solution for the finance industry. They were seeking visibility and building out North America, and I helped them do that by running North America. Then I ran a large underperforming sales team at SunGard when it was run by Silver Lake for a couple of years, and then they sold the company to FIS. From there, I ran sales for North America at a UK-based company based out of London, and they were similarly to SunGard. They were looking for fixing underperformance. Then I formed my advisory firm. The backstory is really, after years and years of sales and management, I realized what's missing with a lot of these enterprise software companies, in my opinion, was there was a lack of qualified deals in a CRM system. And I felt that I should demystify the CRM system with an advisory firm that helped keep companies on track. And so I codified all the processes that I felt were inherent on building copious revenue plans and impact messaging, as well as making sure salespeople were working on real deals with proven steps to get deals closed and make sure that they're closed in forecasted timelines. And that's really the impetus of what my advisory firm is all about.
And when you say codified sales process, tell me a little bit more about that. What did you find, and how did you package it, so to speak, in a way that could be distilled and implemented no matter who you were working with?
So I break it into 4 categories. And the 2 large categories are strategy and the execution on the strategy. Within strategy, you've got what I call impact messaging. A lot of what's missing in a lot of these tech companies is making sure that the folks, the salespeople, and anyone else involved in supporting the efforts to go out and find, cultivate, and win business, that they actually understand what they're selling. Why would anyone buy? Why would they buy from us? And why would they buy from us now? I created an algorithm that would keep people on track, and the delineation of going through that set of questions enables companies to really understand more implicitly what their value is first and foremost, and then why would anyone buy, and what their added advantages over the competitors in the marketplace. If you don't have that down first, it's very difficult to be working on real deals and get them executed or closed in the right timelines. The other piece is, once you understand your value for the market, understanding how you go to market. How do you sell? Are you in a company where you have to first obviously know how much revenue you want to obtain, but once you understand what that number is, do you want to sell direct? Do you want to sell using partnerships through an indirect model? And when you figure out the right combination of direct and or potentially indirect sales, understanding who's going to buy from us allows you to build out the right companies to build territories around, so that when you're hiring salespeople, you know what kind of real inherent skills you need in those people, the kinds of companies, you already know what kinds of companies are going to buy from you, so you're not relying on the salespeople to determine for you where they know people and who they want to sell to. You're going to help support them and give them the toolkit of companies that they're going to go sell into. On the strategy side, you also need to look at what your pricing model looks like. If it's a SaaS company or not, you need to know, is it understandable to the customer, and is it understandable to the salespeople who are actually selling the software? Can they articulate the pricing model? You also want to know whether the margins make sense so that you can get to your number. That's the strategy. On the execution side, the biggest piece is sales process. Now, I created an algorithm that's predicated on 3 variables: a forecasting model, 6 staged events, and a working close document. When you work through these 3 variables from a coaching perspective, you can get to the heart per deal on helping your sales force and any internal resources that are supporting your sales force know whether they're working on real deals, know what the right steps are to take to get those deals closed, and know really accurately, know from a much more accurate perspective when you can forecast those deals, because you've gone through a process that includes figuring out, where to forecast the deal based on communicating the staged events when you're going through each deal with the rep, and using the working document to add, subtract, make changes, make sure that you're asking the right questions. You know who the buyers are in the accounts, know who the competitors are, and it keeps you on track. So that the sales process needs to be transparent, and that's what I've created in terms of codification to ensure that those deals are moving swiftly through a sales cycle and getting closed in a timely fashion.
When you say timely, obviously that's relative depending on perhaps the industry, the company, the price points, the go-to-market strategy, as you just alluded to in the past. How does having the right process impact, perhaps shortening sales cycles?
It's really everything. I can't tell you how many times I've been in meetings that I call we wish meetings, internal, whether it's a sales manager talking to a sales rep or a C-level executive talking to their management teams and the salespeople. If there is no transparency to knowing step by step where there might be a black hole in a deal or a dark spot in a deal, and you're not staying on top of that, just like exercise on a weekly basis in terms of the communication that the management teams are providing to the account sales individuals. If that's not happening daily, the sales cycles are going to not be short. They're going to be long sales cycles, and the deals are going to potentially be incorrectly forecasted in terms of the timeline, or they might not even be real deals to begin with. So especially if it's a funded company and you've got a CRM system of revenue, if that's not accurate and real, it's a catastrophe waiting to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. And give me a sense of the size companies that you're typically engaging at your company.
Right. So through my LLC, I've tried to focus on companies that are what I call in the growth phase, meaning they're probably, if they're organically making money, they're probably in the 20 to $50 to $75 million range on the organic revenue side. If they're funded, they're in a similar zone, somewhere between 25 million in funding to 75 million in funding. These are what I call growth companies. They're not early stage, but they're certainly not that mature in the marketplace yet.
Where are they in their sales, as far as a sales organization, when you engage them? In terms of, just where are they? Like in terms of, I guess, number of salespeople, their go-to-market strategy. Has it been, do they think they've figured it out, but yet they really haven't? And then you need to come in and help them think through that and change that. Right. Give me a sense of that.
Well, it could be a few different scenarios, and you kind of alluded to all of them. First and foremost, the sales force could be anywhere from 5 to 20 people, I would say, on average. The problems that these companies are typically dealing with are on the spectrum from we need to gain visibility and grow our market share to we've had a team in place, we've been in the market for a few years, we're underperforming. I don't know if it's the sales force or something's missing. So there's an assessment that needs to happen on why is there underperformance as it relates to their top line. And another scenario that factors in is it could be a company that's looking to either add a new product to their existing offering, and they want to commercialize a new offering into the mix, and they want to gain some knowledge on either due diligence as it relates to commercializing that new solution set. These are the scenarios.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. And so let's just say you first engage, and by the way, this could be either with a client of your advisory firm, or it could be, let's say, for instance, one of the companies that you've turned around in the past, right, where you've come on as the sales leader and started to turn things around to eventually get them acquired, right? So when you first come in as a new sales leader, like what must you do to drive results? And how long does it typically take? Now, assessing the new opportunity?
Sure, I think that's a great question. The first thing you got to do is you have to assess where the gotchas are, where are the potential, loopholes or inherent problems. And I do it by actually taking those processes I talked about to look under the trash cans around strategy and understand, first and foremost, how have they been going to market? What is the messaging currently? How many customers do they actually have? How much revenue have they generated? What has their sales cycle looked like to date in terms of start to finish? Can I shorten that sales cycle? How many wins are there? And how many deals have they worked on? This is the most important bit I find. How many deals have they really worked on that they lost? When you start to analyze that data, you can then start to put process in place to fix and ensure top line grows. What I, from on a more specific point of perspective, it's very important to very quickly figure out how you're going to find companies that see value in the solution. And you want to make sure that the solution is impactful in the marketplace, but assuming that it is impactful, you want to fix the messaging if you need to, and then look at who's going to really care about it and communicate that value as fast as you can. And if you're looking at helping salespeople be better as well, then you want to understand and coach and mentor each individual, because everybody learns differently. You want to be able to spend time with each individual and understand what's been working in their minds for them and what's been challenging, and sort that out and start to figure out how can you make them better? How can you take your sales process program and help them get better at what they do well and fill in the gaps on where they're weak, and start coaching on a weekly basis per deal.
When you say messaging, fixing the messaging or just get an understanding of the messaging, who is actually doing that? Are you as the CRO or sales leader doing that, or are you bringing in somebody from marketing to help you with that? How does that work?
Great question. I think it's a combination. I think anybody who's heading up a sales team or sales organization should know how to proactively look at the solution that's being offered to the market and take the offering and then kind of derive the messaging themselves for the sales force. But it certainly helps if there's a marketing person on staff who you can work with proactively. A lot of times marketing people have a certain way of thinking about the market impact of the offering, but they don't have it derived in such a way that it helps salespeople go directly to the audience that they need to sell to make it work. So being able to, as a CRO or a head of sales, being able to sit with the marketing person, ask them a lot of questions to make sure you're both on the same page, and collectively you can usually build out a smart go-to-market message that salespeople can use in terms of, why are people buying? Who's really the audience group that buys? And, why would they buy from us now versus doing nothing, or buy from our competitors versus us? So it helps if you have the collaboration, but if you don't, I think someone running sales should be taking a very proactive, approach to getting their sales force geared towards the right message.
What are the indicators then that tell you that the messaging isn't right? And how do you go about collecting that data, so to speak? And how soon do you know?
It's kind of like a pendulum, it's not right if you've got deals that sitting in a CRM system that are not going anywhere. Whereas, the people that are supposed to be buying the software, obviously they're not doing the deals. And if these deals keep slipping, there's a problem somewhere. It could be that you've got the wrong people selling. It could be that, the starting point is that the message is just not resonating in the market. It could be that the product itself doesn't really have enough value in the market, and that's a whole nother ball of wax. But the way to evaluate is to look at over a period of historical data clips, quarter over quarter, year over year, and look at it over a 1 to 3 year period. When you start looking at historical data clips to see wins and losses, opportunities that people worked on, the wins and the losses, and you start quantifying that data, that's when you start to look at where's the issue. And a lot of times the issue is that the impact is just not being understood by the buyers.
And when you say, so just to clarify, when you say messaging, is this as it pertains to in-deal sales process, or are you saying messaging in terms of filling top of funnel, driving leads? Because one of the things I heard you say in that explanation too, as well, is that, it could be just the, qualifying, for instance, right? In other words, if there are a bunch of deals, so to speak, sitting in the CRM and they're not closing, they're not moving forward, and they're just sort of stuck there. Right. Is that qualifying, or are you saying that there's a messaging problem within the sales process in terms of they're not communicating properly or often enough, or asking the right questions? Like, tell me about that.
Right. Another great point you bring up. At a very, very high level, the first messaging issue you want to look at is, are salespeople creating qualified opportunities to put into the funnel, to put into the CRM system? Are they real? Do buyers really show interest and understand the value of the offering and see it as something that's going to improve their environment? That's first and foremost. So there's the issue of qualifying. Once the deal is in a CRM, there could be a subset issue that you need to focus on, which is helping the salespeople actually sell and figure out how to improve their sales process once they've got some real deals that are actually in the CRM. You might then have a secondary problem, which is, do the salespeople understand what questions to ask and statements to make throughout the cycle to ensure that they're taking a real deal and moving it forward so that it can get closed. So there's that secondary issue, but the first issue is really, can you go find real opportunities does the message resonate in the marketplace? And once you've determined that, assuming that it works, then you got to help salespeople with the process of asking the right questions and making the right statements to their potential buyers, to make sure that they're working on real opportunities that can get closed in real timelines.
What about when you don't necessarily have the right process there? And obviously, I'm sure that's why they're hiring you, right? Because they don't have the right process to begin with. And you mentioned maybe you have the wrong people. Like, how do you go about implementing and communicating change, right? And let's just face it, humans are always reluctant to change, right?
Right.
And sales is hard enough. So how do you go about doing it in an effective way that to get it done, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I remember when I worked at a large fintech vendor, I had a big sales team, and the mode of operandi was we have salespeople that just are not doing a great job. You might want to look at these people and make a change. And I personally, like to give everybody an opportunity, including myself. I want us all to win. I want the whole world to win. I don't like walking into environments and being the bearer of bad news. I think the most important thing gets back to what I was saying earlier. You want to look at each individual and start understanding what deals they're working on, and ask them a lot of questions. As a leader, you want to first of all build a relationship with them, where to the point where they see you as a trusted advisor to them, someone they can rely on and go to. I like to, in the environments that I worked at when I was in leadership positions, I wanted to get to know the salespeople individually per their deals and understand, why are these deals in their minds real? What needs to happen in order to move them forward? How can I help them move them forward? If I discern through that type of communication that they might not be the right fit, or meaning they just can't get coached on where the weakness might be, then you have to swiftly make a change. And so the combination of understanding, do you have the right person selling into the right territory? Some people are better at upselling into existing accounts. Other people are really good at creating market share in brand new logo accounts. Some people are good at both. Making sure through the evaluation of the individual salesperson that you have the right individual in the right territory is step one. Coaching them on deals that are in the CRM to feel comfortable that they are doing the right things, or can they be coached and mentored on the weaknesses or not? And then you can make a change from there. But these are the starting points to helping you discern whether or not you've got the right team in place, and are you going to market into the right territories with the right people, on the right accounts.
How do you know someone is the wrong person for the wrong account, for the wrong territory?
Well, I've always been a big believer that, I think sales is a team sport. It's really not a sport for, cowboys, people that don't want help from anyone other than themselves. I find that that's usually a recipe for disaster, unless they are just winning business left and right. And then in that case, you just leave them alone. But I think innately, we're in an industry of communicating, and the more transparency you have, the more team-oriented players that you actually have on board, the the better chance you have for success, just like a sport. It's usually not just one person and a manager. It's usually a team of salespeople. Everyone can learn from one another. I can learn from people that work for me, with me. We can all learn from each other. And I think there's often a flag will go up if I recognize someone doesn't want to participate in the communication.
In the communication. So that's more, so it sounds to me like regardless of which territory that they're in, they're probably not going to be a good fit if it's something that is more of a cultural fit, I suppose, as opposed to someone that's in the wrong territory, right? In that case?
Yeah. Your question initially was, how do you know you need to make a change right away? I think I look at people who are team players, and that is a cultural issue, but everyone learns and everyone works differently. So if you happen to have people on your team that are crushing it and they want to be left alone, then you leave them alone. But I find that for the most part, most people are not like A+ players on their own. They need to strategize with other people. They should be open to being coached and mentored. And if they are, then there's a good chance you can help improve their performance so that they can go out and win business.
Right. Yep. Okay. And basically, you mentioned one of the things is the territory. It might be misaligned with the person, and that sometimes the right person is in the wrong territory, or vice versa. Is it a situation like maybe, maybe there's a headquarters, for instance, but the person is working remotely, and maybe that's going to hinder or hamper the need for them to collaborate, as opposed to somebody else who, frankly, doesn't necessarily need as much, collaboration or hand-holding, and can do it more on their own, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I think the industry is actually pretty much remote. Some companies might have a bunch of people in an office location, but I think for the most part, the collaboration is going to be with people around the country, doing, Zoom type chats or phone chats. And there just needs to be good, strong communication. When you have a working close document and you can stay on point with checks and balances, you can get to the heart or the root of whether people are really working on real deals or not. And so I don't think it's so much about having everyone together in the same office, although there's pluses to that, but you can certainly do collaboration remotely. The territory alignment piece has more to do with someone's style of communicating. When you're in companies that have already bought from you and you're leveraging those existing relationships into more relationships into that existing account, there might be a softer style of communicating that somebody exudes when they're talking to people within that company versus someone who's going out and finding new business in places that have never bought from you before. The style there might be a need to be slightly more aggressive, although I think in both scenarios there's a lot of similarities, but that might be one differential where you get to hiring people whose personalities match up to the type of territory that they're selling into.
Got it. Yep, that makes sense. So let me ask you this: do you need the right people to fit the process, or the right process to fit the people? Where do you put the more of the emphasis or importance?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've always felt that innately you need transparency, and the process that I've created ultimately creates transparency, and it creates an open dialogue with individuals to figure out whether or not they understand how to articulate the message, and how to go out and actually sell it. So I think at the end of the day, I don't have a process that tries to box people in. In fact, it's just the opposite. My process, I think, it bodes for individuality, and it wants people in an organization culturally to feel that they can go about doing what they're doing individually, and I am there using this codified process, if you will, to help customize their approach to selling and to make each individual person, whether they're salespeople or in a supporting role to sales, better at their jobs, but utilizing their own style. I don't want to box people in to a process that makes people uncomfortable. I want to help make them feel that their individual style is going to shine more. I'm just there to help use the process as a checks and balances, but then you really do need people on board who have leadership skills and are empathetic and have humility, so that those that are working with that kind of with the leader feel comfortable in going through the sets of questions that'll help get them better at winning business.
And how do you motivate behavior, right? Like, how do you motivate the right performance, especially if you're within let's say a private equity backed company where, obviously there's certainly a lot of pressure, right? And high pressure.
Yeah.
Like, how do you motivate the right behaviors and frankly, just motivate people to perform?
Yeah, I think everyone's got their own motivation. I think one probably key denominator for salespeople is they typically want to make money. That's why they're in sales roles. And then typically most salespeople like talking to other people that might potentially buy whatever. They're somewhat comfortable getting in front of people they don't know and talking. So the way you motivate behavior is, I think, by focusing on understanding where somebody feels confident and where they have uncertainty in their approach or belief that they can win and succeed and hit their numbers and make money. And you have to ask, almost like a psychiatrist or a PhD in psychology, you almost have to get into their heads and understand where they feel confident and help coach and mentor the confidence that they have. And the weakness, you want to help them with the weakness. You want to try to pull the weakness apart. There might be something that someone's not good at, but there's a few things that they're really good at. So you want to build up what they're really good at to help them stay highly motivated and still kind of coach them and mentor them on how you're going to work as a team with them to improve the weakness. And this is what I did and why I had success when I was running sales teams, at different software companies.
What about managing board expectations when, they're expecting you to deliver a certain result, but yet what you're forecasting, given the data that you have and sort of, I guess, salespeople's expectations in terms of the numbers to achieve. How do you manage up, so to speak, to the board to set the right expectations, but then also manage the team to like my point, to keep them motivated to hit that number that might, frankly, might not be all that achievable?
That's correct. Well, therein lies the rub. Therein lies the rub to the whole industry, and it is a balancing act. And occasionally, you fail, but oftentimes you're trying to manage unrealistic revenue expectations. And I find the best way to, try to keep people motivated to hitting expectations is to go up and work with your CEO and also the funder if they're involved, the private equity or venture capital firm. Work with whoever the funder person is, that managing partner, and try your best to protect your sales force by creating expectations that are more realistic so that they feel like they have a fighting chance. But at the same time, work with the sales force on shortening sales cycles and finding deals faster. So they've got a real opportunity that they feel in their hearts will allow them to make money and therefore hopefully, be sustainable over a long period of time. And, it's that kind of balancing act.
So complete this sentence for me then. A sales leader's ability to drive results is directly related to his or her ability to do what?
Gain trust. I mean, most importantly, you have to have the trust of the people that work for you, the people who you're working for, and in between. You want to have an environment where, the data points are copacetic between you and your salespeople, the managing partners of the funders, the C-level group that you work for. Everyone needs to feel that you are doing everything you can possibly be doing. There is a human element to this. I think it's difficult in general to sell solutions that oftentimes require some creativity in helping an audience even understand why they could benefit from the solution. So you're building that vision, which takes time. And there's a lot of uncertainty in general selling enterprise software. So you gotta, I think, go to work every day with humility and empathy. And most importantly, you want, of all the people that you want trusting you, you want the people that are helping you obtain the revenue. So that sales team, you want those folks to feel like you are, not just their leader to help them bring in money, but somebody that they can, confide in. And because, people are going to go through their days on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and things are going to creep into their heads. And the more focused they are with positive energy, the better chance you have for real success. So it's trust.
And okay. And what about your approach for grooming? You mentioned leaders, right? Grooming new sales leaders. Like I'll ask it this way: what have the best salespeople done, or what traits do they have? What behaviors that they have that other people struggle with? And then how can they make a smoother transition from individual contributor to become sales leaders?
Yeah, I think the traits that I've seen over the years that help define and separate a really good salesperson from someone who might be mediocre is they tend to be organized with their world of information that they need to understand. They tend to understand who's going to buy from them and why. They really understand how to price the solutions out and how to talk to their management teams about how they want to price out a solution. And when they're in front of customers or prospects, they know what questions to ask and what statements to make that will enable them to get correct data points that will allow them to then know that the deals they're putting in the CRM are real. I also find that really good salespeople tend to be good writers. I find that 70 to 75% of a deal cycle is oftentimes in email, especially in the world we live in today. So no matter where you are in your cycle, you have to know what is the reason you're writing that email, what is the purpose of that note. I find that one of the most important things you can do, and I like to do whether I was in a company or if I'm advising a company, I think it's critical to be able to evaluate email communication from between salespeople and the prospects that they're trying to sell to, because a lot can be said and told in an email. You might think that emails are simplistic, but if they don't have an ask and deals go dark, a lot of times it's because those emails, that 75%, are not communicating effectively to get the responses you need. So good salespeople are good email communicators, written communicators, as well as doing the other things that I just suggested.
Okay.
And I think if you're going to, look at what it takes to then go to the next level, the byproduct is if you do those well and you go about it with a sense of humility and empathy, because you understand that it's tough business. Sometimes people can work super hard and have zero results. And sometimes people don't have to work hard at all and they just have deals that fall into the bucket. When you have that inherent understanding that this is a tough business, it allows people to want to communicate with you. It allows people to want to trust you. And I think this is something that's missing in a lot of leadership people and C-level people that are in a lot of these companies. They don't have the human element. They're not structured that way, in their brains. And I think it makes it hard for people to work for those types of individuals. You want to have positive motivation, in order to build a winning culture. That's just my opinion, my perspective.
So you're more of a carrot leader than a stick leader.
Yeah, I've worked for the stick leaders, and even though there's probably a whole bunch of stick leaders out there that'll, tell you otherwise, that fear is a good motivator. I never ever met another salesperson in my lifetime who loved the feeling of being in fear.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, let's end it with what I'm calling now the Rapid Fire 5. You guys, if you're listening to this, it's probably the third or fourth person that I've asked these questions. This is a new feature, of course, the Overquota podcast, where I ask 5 quick questions and to elicit 5 relatively quick answers, just to sort of get a better understanding of my guests. So here we go. Your favorite sales enablement tool is what?
My favorite sales enablement tool is the ability to feel confident that you know why people want your software. Why would they really benefit from it? So just being able to understand the communication of why people want to buy it. And that excites people, I think, when they're salespeople. The enablement of, knowing that they've got a reasoning behind it. Now, if there's software in the marketplace that can help you do that, a content management tool that might help you build that storyline even better, that might be a very cool tool to have. But I think just innately the communication of knowing that there's an audience at companies that really see the value and you know exactly why, that would be the biggest sales enablement tool.
So you're thinking sales enablement tool more theoretically than literally, in terms of whether there's a particular product or tool that you use.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, there's sales enablement tools are, these days, it's become a much bigger marketplace, and there's a lot of investing that's going into different sales enablement software companies. I think there's value in those sorts of company tools, but I don't have a specific software product that I would, totally say is the greatest thing in the world. I'd have to really spend a lot of time evaluating. I think the theoretical aspect, though, first and foremost, is what's needed.
Okay. And the one thing that helps you stay productive and or focused?
I think knowing that you can win. If you feel that your hard work is going to result in success, that keeps me focused. So, on a daily basis, feeling that what I need to accomplish that day is something I can get done, enables me to stay focused on the task at hand. I think where people go off the rails is when they feel overwhelmed by a task or a set of tasks that they have to do, and whatever it might be. And I think that's what keeps me motivated, is feeling confident that I can accomplish the goal.
Best advice for first-time sales leaders, what would that be?
Well, I think the best advice I could provide is don't be a stick leader. You know, don't manage people from the vantage point of putting fear and intimidation into their minds, and don't manage from the glass house. Lead from the front. Everybody wants to feel that they can respect the person they work for and the people they work with. And the minute someone does not feel that they can respect somebody, they usually zone out. So I have, in my experiences, I know that there's a lot of stick leaders out there who seem to, for some reason, get long runs in different environments that they're in. But I've never been a believer in that. I think it's detrimental. If you're going to become responsible for other people, never expect them to have full accountability. You've got to have accountability just as much. And I would say you've got to be held even more accountable. You can't run around telling people you're memoryless or expect the people on the front lines to do it all. That just doesn't work. And you're gonna build a negative, paranoid culture, and it's going to be a revolving door. If you want a winning culture, lead from the front. You know, show passion, show humility, show empathy.
What motivates you to achieve greatness?
Well, I mean, I think part of it stems from, the fear of failure. And then when you start over analyzing the fear of failure, life takes on a whole new meaning or lack thereof. Someone who I was always motivated by growing up playing a lot of sports, especially tennis, was Jimmy Connors, because to me, he was always a fighter. He was someone who he could be down 2-0 and he was not going to quit. He was not going to give up. And he wore his heart on his sleeve. And I know there's some people who aren't such a believer in that, but I love the fact that he was out there fighting, and you could see him getting pushed down and getting back up. And I loved watching that. I loved watching it, and I respected it, and it reminded me of me. I mean, I've been pushed down a zillion times, but I keep getting up because there really is no alternative.
That's why the Rocky movies are my favorite, in particular Rocky IV, and why I'm raising my kids on Rocky movies.
There you go. Yeah.
That whole story of persistence and getting knocked down and getting back up. That's fantastic. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you, perhaps hire you, or just perhaps maybe even just get additional advice?
Two ways. They could reach me through my work email, through my LLC, which is jeff.hoffman@rapidsalesrevenue.com. They can also call me up the old-fashioned way. I'm always open to people calling me, even if I don't recognize the phone number. I'll take the call, and that number is 917-319-1359.
You are the first person, I believe, in I don't know which episode this will be. If you're listening right now, maybe it's 20, 21, something like that. But the first person that's shared their phone number. So that's cool.
Puts me in a dated range, that's for sure.
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly unique. I think one of my guests recently said, who I think I just published it today, which is May 18th, who said that that we got to stop calling it a phone because it does so many other things. And
right.
Yeah, and he doesn't answer the phone, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Jeff Hoffman, thank you for going over quota.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's been a pleasure.
Goodbye, everybody. I'm cueing the music.